Okay, so what we're gonna discuss is importing, exporting, and sourcing. So this is a bit more technical, I would say. So first, before that, kind of to lay the main aspects. So we have difference between export selling and export marketing. So export selling involves selling the same product at the same price with the same promotional tool, just in a different place. While export marketing tailors the marketing mix to international customers. So these are two terms that are important. If we're doing export marketing, we need to really understand the target market environment and use properly market research, like not just use available data, but probably also collect our own data and really identify the different market segments and the very different potential. So in this case, we're going to have to do decisions. So basically, we would adapt our product as design. We're going to adapt our pricing policies, our distribution and channels, advertising, communication. So all the 4 Ps will be adapted. So the next aspect we would be discussing is how do we organize our export activities, and also how we're going to start by talking how a company is different depending on how they organize their exports. So the first possibility is a company that is completely unwilling to export. So even if somebody comes and tells them, I'm ready to buy products from you, even that we're not willing to export. The second version is we again not very active in export, but if an unsolicited order comes, so somebody just comes to us and wants to buy our products, then we're going to fulfill it. The third option is we explore the feasibility of exporting, so we consider becoming an exporter. And then the fourth stage is the firm exports to one or more markets on a trial basis. So basically, due to our research, we find that some markets are interesting for us, so we give it a try. Then the fifth stage is the firm becomes an experienced exporter to one or more markets. The next one is the firm pursues country or region-focused marketing based on certain criteria. So, for example, we can decide we want to export to Europe or we want to export to NAFTA countries. And the last possibility here is the firm evaluates global market potential and finds the best target markets and then really starts being active there. So when we are exporting, there's a number of problems that can happen related to transportation, handling of goods, liabilities, custom duties, a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of different administrative procedures, warehousing, repairs. So first is regarding logistics, and the second column is also regarding providing the service related to export. So it's not just exporting to a new country. We need to make sure we also offer service to for example, what happens if some product we sell needs to be repaired, or if it needs parts, like for example, I mean, some technical products need constant, like a car, for example. Throughout its lifetime, you need to be able to provide parts. And if people have to source them globally, they are not going to be, or they will be less interested in buying. So this is a table showing you distribution of, basically it shows you the top 10 clothing exporters in billions. So China is leading that table with 161 billion. So this is just specifically coffee export. So, but even for the other countries, you see it's pretty big size of exports. So each country has its own policy with regard to exports and imports. The general tendency with globalization is that most countries are trying to promote free trade and really opening to remove trade barriers. I mean, you have some numbers here of the amount of export, global export, and these numbers have substantially grown since this data is for 2014. Governments in general, so many governments want to support free trade, and in general, even if it's not completely free trade, they support exports and imports. So they have different policies with regard to that. This could be done at a national level, at a regional level, or at a local level. Such government programs that support exports could be tax incentives, subsidies, government assistance, and free trade zones. So these are the most typical ways in which governments can support. Governments can also do the opposite, so they can discourage imports and block market access. Usually they would do that in order to support local industries or to support local employment and so on. So tariffs are one of the ways. We have the so-called 3 Rs rule. So 3 Rs, so this is for rules, rate schedules, and regulations that actually they could discourage or completely block market access. I mean, we don't have to, in some occasions, we don't need to completely block it, but for a tariff, you can make it completely economically not viable to import or usually import some products. You could do also non-tariff barriers. So basically, these are non-financial ways in you, they're more hidden. So you can enter, there are no financial barriers, but then there are quotas or other restrictive or discriminatory policy and procedures. There could be arbitrary monetary policies. So basically, this is a variety of measures that are sometimes not visible. That's why, again, it's very important that we work with people who understand the local markets in which we're planning to export, because there are hidden things that are not visible at first sight, but they can turn to be bigger barriers than the officially announced ones. So here there are some examples of, for example, European Union has quotas on Chinese textiles. China, on the other side, has tariffs as high as 28% on foreign-made auto parts. So you see here the difference also between tariff and non-tariff barriers. For example, China has very expensive, time-consuming procedures for obtaining pharmaceutical import licenses. The general prevailing policy in the world has been that free trade leads to economic growth, and that improves living standards. So the dominant, I mean, there are people who believe the opposite, but the dominant philosophy has been that there's more good than bad created by that. So there has been real strive to harmonize tariff systems across the world so that we make trading easier. So the World Customs Organization has created this harmonized tariff system. It's effective now for what is it now, 30-something years, and it's adopted by most trading nations. So according to which we have classification numbers for products, which make it easier to basically export and import. So we also have these two ways of single column tariff and two column tariff. So basically some products have kind of a simple tariff that's valid, and then for some countries there's an additional tariff. That's the way it's done, and we're giving you here examples. So the general tariff could be 1.5%, and then column 1 is that it's free for a certain number of countries, or 0.4 for other countries. And there's this list of countries this applies. And then for all other countries, there's an additional column 3 of 30%. So you see here, there's a very differentiated way of treating different countries, depending on the different free trade agreements that are being established, different other trading relationships between the country. So when we say preferential tariff, that means that we have introduced, sometimes there is no tariff or reduced tariff to certain countries. GATT in general prohibits this, and with free exceptions. The reason it's prohibited is because the general direction is towards removing barriers, not putting them. But in free cases, we can do it. One is historical preference arrangements already exist. So in other words, traditionally, this is something we've been doing. If the preference is part of a formal economic integration treaty, and also industrial countries are permitted to grant preferential market access to developing countries. Customs duties could be free. There's certain variations. So when we have ad valorem duty, this is expressed as a percentage of the value of goods, or we can have a specific duty. So it's a specific amount in a currency per unit, or per weight, or per volume length for other unit of measurement. So it's not depending on the value for which we're going to sell the good, but it's based on its quantity. And we can also have a combination. There could be also anti-dumping duties. So dumping is when we sell our products at another market at really low prices, which is endangering local producers. We can then have countervailing duties. There's a variable import levies applied to agriculture. Also temporary surcharges which protect local industries. So it's actually pretty complex area, but again, similarly to what I said about intellectual property rights, it's actually very important to work with experts. So if our company does not have the expertise inside, we need to really work with, there's a number of agencies that we can work with, which are really specialized and understand all these details, because I've been in situations where you can make really big mistakes that cost you a lot of money if you're not understanding all the different peculiarities. So this brings us also to the different export participants. So depending on what we're doing, we can use some of these or all of them. So they have different roles. Some of them are just helping us to, so for example, freight forwarders would be the ones we use for transportation. All the other ones are different variations in terms of who they represent. But all of them can help us actually to orient in the market, and it really depends on who we use, depends on how much expertise we have in-house versus how much we need to outsource to another party. Some of these are real experts. Some of these expert participants are actually very they specialize, especially for example export brokers, export merchants. They specialize in putting people together. So they're finding opportunities and putting people together. So they do help a lot, orienting ourselves and not making expensive mistakes. So exactly what I was mentioning. So how we organize the exporting in the manufacturer's country will depend on how much we want to do in-house and how much we want to outsource. We could so there are different aspects we need to take care in the manufacturing country, and then different aspects in the market country where we are sending the products. So we could again have direct market representation or representation by independent intermediaries. The advantage of having direct market representation is we have control over the process and we can ensure quality of communication. However, that's the more expensive option. So if we are dealing with small volumes, we might hop up for using independent intermediaries. There are a number of details in terms of how do we finance trade and how do we pay. So there are these different financial instruments. The most simple is cash with order, open account. Then it gets more sophisticated when we go to letters of credit or bill of exchange. So the letter of credit is a system created. So it's a system that is of relationships between the two parties involved in the export, but also involving a bank. Sometimes it could be even several banks could be involved. So basically the whole process involves insurance that the money is received only when certain conditions have been met. So when the goods are really delivered and they're in the necessary quantity and quality and everything is fulfilled according to the contract which has been signed. So basically it's a way of guaranteeing both parties that the interests are taken care of through involving a bank. So this is a quite more complicated procedure, more expensive, and sometimes we don't need to use that. Sometimes we can hope for more easier ways of doing. For example, documentary collection, or yeah, there's a few here more possibilities. So basically, when we're using simpler ways, we're balancing the risk of that can happen with. We're comparing the probability of risk versus the cost and time involved in doing a more complicated procedure. And in any of these versions, the key is when do the goods pass to the other side versus when does the money happen, and also what happens if something is damaged during transportation. So a number of issues we need to think about, and again the best is to reach the help of people who have experienced if we don't have that. There is a number of institutions which are dealing with basically united fighting against terrorism. Cargo and is used to import and export dangerous goods, forbidden goods, and so on. So there's a number of authorities that deal with that. Duty drawback is something also we need to be aware of and know how to deal with that. So sometimes we have the right to refund duties we have paid on imports with a process or incorporate it into other goods and re-export it. So in other words, we have imported something, we paid our duties, we used that something into something else, and then we're exporting again. So if we use duty drawbacks, this is reducing the price of imported production inputs. It's used in the USA to encourage exports. And I mean, here we're giving you some examples. For example, China had to reduce drawbacks in order to join the WTO. So there are different requirements. Basically, everything is the World Trade Organization's objective is to really remove as much as possible barriers and make trading as easy as possible. Another decision we face, strategic possibility, is sourcing. So where it relates to whether do we buy our products and services, do we produce everything, or do we outsource some of the production? And if we do, where do we outsource it? So global outsourcing, and both global outsourcing and offshoring refers to moving work to another country. While in the beginning this was specifically something we would do with manufacturing goods, it has become a practice also with regard to services. So for example, the first non-manufactured case of non-manufactured goods being outsourced were call centers. You've probably all have experience with call centers. The problem with services like that has been, like some companies have actually returned back their call centers to manage them inside the company, because when you take it outside of the company, then you're dealing with, especially if things are handled in another country, then we run into a lot of different communication issues and different difficulties. In some cases, customers have been very unhappy with the service that's provided when we outsource such critical aspects of the service. The factors that affect sourcing are, in general, the management vision, different costs and conditions, the needs of the customers, also public opinion, the availability, like all the logistics around doing that, country infrastructure, currency risk and exchange rates, political environment. Yeah, so lots of things we need to consider. A few more export and import issues we want to address today is management vision. So some CEOs consider that keeping manufacturing at home is part of their points of differentiation, actually. So this is giving example here with Swatch, but it's also with other Swiss watches. So a lot of production has been kept in Switzerland, although this means much higher cost. Also, some CEOs focus on high value-added products rather than manufacturing side. So they focus on really achieving the best possible quality rather than thinking of the lowest cost. Other factors that influence these things related to costs and conditions. So cost of land, cost of labor, so all the factors of production are influencing our decisions. The main one of them is labor. So labor is the biggest factor when we are relocating to another country. But what's interesting with labor is, just like any other products and services, when we have high demand for labor, then price goes up. So what's interesting is, for example, this happened in China. A lot of companies moved their production there due to lower labor costs, but that has created a big demand for certain types of employees. So as a result, wages have gone up. So the advantage now of China is not what it used to be. So moving a production to another country is a lengthy process. It doesn't happen overnight. So we run the risk by the time we do it that there are changes in the local labor market. And the savings are not as big as we wanted them to be. Also, sometimes the cultural differences and other factors related to the local culture and economy could turn to make things more expensive to us. So sometimes it's not just about the direct factors of production, but also understanding really the full spectrum of what we need to deal with. Yeah, so other factors, the customer needs, for example, Dell, this is an example of what I was talking about. Dell moved the call center back to the United States because customers were complaining. Issues of logistics and country infrastructure also could completely influence what we decide to do. Politics, we already spoke pretty much about it, but political factors and can make a huge impact on our business. So definitely this is something we're considering. And obviously foreign exchange rate. So the volatility of exchange rates can sometimes be the difference between success and failure in a business. So obviously it's something we need to consider. Okay, so with this we are finishing with the last chapter, and now we're going to talk about the final thing we're going to do is we will talk about the last case. So I'm going to go to that page, 1 second. So this case is about specifically East Asian countries, but the majority of actually the case is about Hong Kong as a destination. Actually, I'll go to the second part of the case. So specifically about Hong Kong as a trade and investment hub. So have you read the case? Has anybody read it? No. Do you have experience with Hong Kong? So what do you know about Hong Kong?
I think it's not based on the book, but it's just like I think because of Hong Kong, they are like a special economic zone. So I believe that so many companies from the Western, they would like to establish the companies there because of the tax of benefit on everything. And of course, it's also near because they would like to invest in China. And Hong Kong actually is a part of China as well. So they just would like to use the tax benefit in Hong Kong, and then they just produce the goods from the factory in China.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's one of the biggest ports actually in the world, servicing huge part of trade. Anything else? I don't know. Does anybody else has any experience or want to mention something but the knowledge about Hong Kong in general, if you haven't read the case? Okay, so I'm gonna present you then a little bit more the case. Hong Kong, I mean, this case was written, I think, as we all know, there has been more recent changes in Hong Kong here, which influence everything I'm going to talk about. But here we're talking more from historical term. So according to the case, Hong Kong is the world's 7th largest trading economy in 2017. And it has the highest foreign direct investment after China. I mean, we know now it's part of China. That's why I'm saying keep that in mind that the case was written earlier than the last changes. So in addition to, so they're saying it is often the first port of call for Western companies approaching Asian markets for exporting as well as sourcing. So this in itself represents, I mean, it already tells us the significance, because Hong Kong is not, it's not that large as a territory, obviously. But they have taken that strategic position, and they're basically being the entry point for the whole Asian continent. So this strategic benefit doesn't happen by accident. So it's a result of a number of things that the local governments have done in order to make that to make it attractive, to make it meaningful for Western companies to actually use that as a first point of contact. So in addition, it offers a very sophisticated, so one of the factors is the sophisticated service economy. So we're saying that services, so this is the so-called tertiary sector, if you know, so we have primary, secondary, and tertiary sector. So in this case, the service economy or the tertiary sector is accounting for more than 90% in terms of contribution. So overall, Hong Kong's GDP is based on 4 main factors: trading and politics, financial services, tourism, and professional services. So the question comes, what makes Hong Kong so attractive? So first of all, Hong Kong is a free trade zone in the sense that all products, with the exception of specific items like tobacco and spirits, enjoy 0 taxes in both import and export. So this is the first point of attraction. So that means that it makes total sense. So companies are not incurring costs if they bring their imports and exports there, and from that point distribute it to other places. It also has series of advantages, such as offshoring of manufacturing to the neighboring Guangdong province in China, and then outputs are sent to Hong Kong for packaging, advertising, and further re-export. So they're saying the majority of the Hong Kong exports actually comprise re-exports of imported products from China and abroad. So it's a very interesting how we've created these strategic advantages. So we're not necessarily producing, actually we're almost not producing anything. We just created strategic advantage and strategic reasons how to bridge the gaps between different markets and to help. So practically they have put themselves in the whole supply chain by adding value to the different participants. In this way, creating a whole competitive advantage for the country as a whole. So let's see a couple of more things here. So in general, with China, as I said several times, we're now there's a further integration, but specifically the relationships have become easier since the close economic partnership agreement, which was signed in 2004 and was the first of its kind to be signed between the 2 entities. which became then a major point of improving the integration of Hong Kong's economy with the Chinese mainland. So this partnership agreement was the foundation for what happened further in changing, in the role of Hong Kong. Another factor that is important to be mentioned is infrastructure. So infrastructure, I mentioned it also in the PowerPoint when I was going through the main points. Infrastructure is a very important aspect of import and export. So countries which don't have good infrastructure, and that includes roads and ports and air transport, but it includes today also things like quality of internet, availability of other services. So infrastructure is actually a broad concept, which plays a huge role into the ability of a country to both compete or to become, as we see here, kind of a special center of attention. Infrastructure is part of the it's the task of governments to improve infrastructure, and this is one of the main ways in which they can help a country or a region to improve economically. So this case here really shows us how focus on infrastructure and on quality services have brought economic growth to the country, substantial economic growth. As part of this infrastructure, this case is also giving you examples about the impressive network of exhibitions and conventions. So Hong Kong is considered one of the most efficient and organized cities in the world as far as conventions and exhibitions. So according to government statistics, the exhibition business generated 77,000 jobs in 2016 and accounted for 2.1% of Hong Kong's GDP. So this just shows you what is the impact for the local economy of something like developing a network for providing the availability for exhibitions and conventions. And here we have a multiplier effect. So it's not just the money and jobs generated by the exhibition and conventions, but I'm sure that out of this exhibition and conventions, new trade relations appear, companies find partners, they have the possibility to show the goods and services they want to export or import or export. So again, it's not just this 2.1% of GDP. I'm sure that if we see the whole impact, it's much bigger than that. Yeah, so these factors and a number of other things we didn't go into details now have actually made Hong Kong the trade hub which we know today. And they have positioned themselves strategically as a key component in Asian supply chains. So basically a lot of things now related to the trade between Asia, the whole continent of Asia, the rest of the world, are actually going through Hong Kong. We're also saying it has the world's busiest airport for international cargo specifically, and the 5th busiest container port after Shanghai, Singapore, Shenzhen, and Ningbo, Zhoushan. Okay. There's also more information on the deep water port and so on. What's also interesting is Hong Kong has become also an entry point for not just traditional export-import companies, but for example, fashion companies which want to enter the Asian market have made Hong Kong as kind of their first hub where they can showcase their brands, which would later enter China and other Asian markets. For example, I think there was an interesting example here. Yeah, maybe it wasn't here, but I remember there was a fashion brand that actually they listed themselves on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. So they were Italian brand, but they didn't list themselves in another, for example, European stock exchange. They went in Hong Kong because they felt that by listing themselves as a publicly traded company in Hong Kong, this will make them more popular for Chinese customers as well. So there are these more detailed strategic ways in which companies use Hong Kong as an opportunity to enter these markets. Yeah, they're also giving here some challenges. Yeah, but basically the conclusion they make is that they will continue to keep its position because the strategic advantages are much bigger than the certain things that still need to be worked out. So I have some question. So from your perspective, because your majority of you, as far as I know, are from Asia. I'm not sure in detail, so I apologize if I'm not 100% sure who is where. But do you have any additional experience with Hong Kong that you would like to, is there something specific you want to comment on this case?
I just would like to share about the previous experience because I work in the fashion company, and I know that like in Hong Kong, let's say like in Asia market, before we're going to launch any collections, normally we also try to send the product samples to Hong Kong first, and then the buyers around the world, they will just fly to Hong Kong and they just select the product there. And of course, the transaction and everything we will try to do through the Hong Kong as well because of the benefit and everything. And also that when we would like to ship the goods, let's say from Europe, we would like to send to Hong Kong sometimes first, and then they will distribute the goods from there to the other countries in the region, let's say like in the East Europe. I know it's in the East Asia.
Very
something like this.
interesting. Okay, so you're confirming from your personal experience that this is how Hong Kong works. And the company you're working with, what was their logic? Why would they do that?
It's like I worked for the Giorgio Armani and G-Star. And of course, because Hong Kong is kind of like, of course, with the tax and everything, when we send the goods to Hong Kong, of course, we don't have to pay the tax. And it's easy for the people because it's also like a hub, like you mentioned that, like it's like a hub for the transportation and shipping companies. So that's why it's very convenient there already to do the transaction and to distribute the goods. And also it's easier for the people because of the how to say, the congestion and the busy of the airport. That's why they have so many flights. So it's very convenient for the buyers or the retailers that they would like to fly there and to just attend the buying section or the exhibition or whatever about like that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I think because of the I mean, it's part of the strategic vision for developing Hong Kong, but also because of the I think Hong Kong has it's almost like a translator. I don't know, like culturally it's easier to deal with them instead of trying to conquer the same, I mean, to go immediately into other markets. So they serve as this kind of transition points, which is easier They've made it easier for Western companies to communicate with them, to relate to how things are done, and then go forward from there. It's very interesting and very smart. Yeah.
And I would like to say, like in the fashion industry, we also call Hong Kong like the first door or the window of Asia. So that's why we would like to, when we present the new collection, we will set up in Hong Kong first, because people, when they would like to see the trend and anything, they will just go to Hong Kong and they will see everything there.
Yeah, so it has become more like Paris is in Paris,
Yeah.
Milano in Europe. So if you want something to show kind of as a trend, that's where you go. Yeah. So this is part of a very careful positioning. It's no coincidence. So these countries are not known for this. It's part of a carefully mastered strategy in terms of attracting, becoming that point of reference. And because look at those, it's very interesting. We're not producing anything, right? 90% is services, but huge economic growth, exactly because they've managed to really strategically position themselves well. I mean, we've talked about positioning of companies, but actually countries can also position themselves, or regions. And as you're saying, they immediately, fashion companies just know they need to go there first. It's no question today, right? Okay, any other questions or comments? Did anybody else have some experiences they want to share? And it could be for another case. We discussed Uber, Nestle, Chinese luxury market in Hong Kong. Any other question or comments? No? Any other questions at all for what we're discussing?
Thank you, Natalia. Thank you.
Thank you as well. I hope, please feel free. We have 2 more times we'll be together, so feel free to participate more. And because you have so much experience, as we heard now from Keteran, when you bring your own experience and your own questions, it could become much more interesting for both you and me, and most importantly, more effective for your learning. So feel free to participate more. I'd love that, and I'll make the space for that.